The peons of the Empire dare lay their hands on the chest I seek? These cattle are ignorant of what they now possess, but they will not live long enough to find out.
The annals of the Empire are filled with the wretched deeds of the von Carstein dynasty, a bloodline of Sylvania that has long held a stranglehold upon the eastern provinces of the Old World. Most scholars focus their attention upon the landlocked horrors of Castle Drakenhof, or the fog-choked forests where the dead do not rest. Yet there exists a chapter of this dark history that drifted far from the soil of Sylvania to the churning heart of the great ocean. This account concerns Nyklaus von Carstein, the vampire who would abandon the petty squabbles of his kin to become Count Noctilus, the master of the Galleon's graveyard and the architect of the Dreadfleet. In this video, we will also explore the Bloody Reaver, a massive seafaring hulk built around the stony core of the Sylvanian fortress, the testimonies of those few who have survived an encounter against the undead and their great depth guard, and even the blasphemous creation of the Necrofex Colossus, towering walking shipwrecks animated by the souls of living sacrifices. The bloodstained dynasty of the von Carsteins has always been driven by a singular consuming lust for power. At the heart of the dangerous megalomania that defines all vampires is an ambition to master the art of necromancy and use it to drive the mortal world to its knees. Yet most of these creatures are hindered by their own devious nature, constantly vying amongst themselves for supremacy within the desolate borders of Sylvania. Nyklaus von Carstein was a creature possessed of a different vision. Tired of constant power struggles and the predictable infighting of his peers, he sought another way to gain power. Within the dusty and forbidden tomes of necromancy and chaos sorcery, he discovered charts that mapped the ebb and flow of magic across the world. In a moment of profound revelation, Nyklaus realized that the winds of magic were not merely terrestrial phenomena. If he could master the art of seafaring, he would be able to harness the gales of magic that whirl and cascade across the great oceans. His research identified a specific skull-strewn vortex that festered in the distant heart of the ocean, a tempest of magic that drew the dead unto itself like a giant lodestone. This was the power Nyklaus needed, and so he studied the vortex with an intensity only an immortal of his kind could muster, conducting experiments and modifying his theories until he understood the nature and form of the strange tempest. To reach this power, Nyklaus became a master of translocation, a specialized aspect of shadow magic. He learned that, with sufficient harnessed power, he could move not only his minions, but the very substance of the land itself. This ambition reached its peak upon an unhallowed night of Geheimnisnacht, when the veil between worlds is at its thinnest. From the heart of his citadel, Nyklaus prepared a ritual of staggering proportions. He raised 1,200 of the dead, each one a mortal he had personally slain throughout his long life. With a titanic effort of will, he set them to shambling in a convoluted spiral that matched the flow of the oceanic vortex. As the ritual reached its crescendo, Nyklaus summoned a host of spirit and blood-sucking fell bats to focus the magical currents. The magic on the wind produced an eldritch storm that rose to a mind-shattering peak. With a single, deafening crash of thunder, the castle and the rocky crag upon which it sat were torn from Sylvania and shifted to the center of the Galleon's graveyard.
We woke to a sound that was not born of any natural tempest. It was a single, deafening crash of thunder, so potent It seemed to rattle the very soul within my ribs. I remember the windows of our hovels shattering, and the livestock screaming in their pens, as if the soil itself were shrieking in agony.
The creature, once known as Nyklaus von Carstein, was gone forever, reborn as Count Noctilus. He looked upon his new domain with darkling pride. The Galleon's graveyard, known to the elves as the Ullathane, is a mystical realm infested with the living dead and the source of a curse upon the seas. It exists at the center of the great ocean, acting as a spiritual counterpart to the great moor in the east. While the moor draws in life, the maelstrom at the heart of the graveyard draws in death. Whenever a ship sinks, its wreck vanishes overnight, pulled through the veil to emerge in the service of Noctilus.
Only I, Count Noctilus, am worthy of the Maelstrom's boundless power. Only I can rule the great ocean and the waters beyond.
Why all these stalls? We go hunt. Yes, hunt beasts. Us! No matter!
Death vermin!
My lord, we have the map. What are your orders?
Kill the beast. Resurrect the beast. Rule the waves.
The Galleon's graveyard is a twisted landscape of shipwrecks and supernatural hazards. At its heart lies the Maelstrom, a sentient whirlpool that pulls shipwrecks and the dead beyond the veil. It is here that Count Noctilus bides his time amidst the corpses of long-dead sea monsters and sailors. The outer boundary is known as Corpse Reef, a labyrinthine warren of petrified bone. Each spur of the reef is covered in the remains of 1,000 sailors, their skeletal cadavers twisted together in a vile mockery of a reef coral. To breach the ethereal boundary of the Galleon's graveyard is all but impossible for mortal men. The realm exists in a state of unlife, where time and space are distorted. The magic of this place ensures that Noctilus cannot truly be killed in the mortal realm. Should his physical form be destroyed, he is swiftly drawn back to the graveyard and given unlife once more. Similarly, all who die at sea are pulled into the Ullathane to rise again as the living dead, swelling the ranks of the Count's zombie pirate fleet.
They cannot truly be killed. Not in the mortal realm, at least. All those who die at sea are pulled into the Ullathane to rise again as the living dead. Should the creature that was once Nyklaus von Carstein die, he would swiftly be drawn back here and given on life once more by the magic of this place. We must end the curse that blights these waters and spills out into the oceans we love. That alone will prevent his rebirth. He must be drawn out of his castle, for a tyrant will risk his crown only when someone moves to take it from him. If he were to be slain within this realm, and the curse lifted, then Nyklaus would meet his final death.
For 2 bleak decades, the undead reavers of Count Noctilus have plagued the oceans. The Dreadfleet is an unholy alliance of undead and demon-aligned captains who have sworn foul deals with the Master of the Maelstrom. After each raid, their fleet disappears into its lair as quickly and silently as it appeared. The approach of the Dreadfleet is as stealthy as a shark, and its victories are as inevitable as the tide. Even the pirate lords of Sartosa fear the vampire commander. Over a 6-month period, the Bloody Reaver and its thrall warships systematically demolished the ports of Tyria before melting back into the darkness. Noctilus used the power of the graveyard to forge a warship of staggering proportions. His flagship, the Bloody Reaver, began as his own Sylvanian castle. Upon arriving, he used sorcery to bind the wreckage of ships, building a massive hull around the stony core of his fortress. The resulting seafaring hulk is a nightmare made real, replete with the myriad hulls of broken galleons that are both gothic and grand. The Bloody Reaver resembles a black ark in scale, but its construction is far more chaotic. Thousands of undead servants teem across its slanted decks. Every night, the bloated corpses of the drowned are summoned to bolster the crew. Many a broadside has slammed against the Bloody Reaver, only to find the wreckage of ancient ships miraculously drawn upon it, shoring up its shattered architecture as if the warship were being refashioned by invisible giants. The Count does not rely solely upon zombie deckhands. From the battlements of the Citadel, he sends forth swarms of vampiric hellfish and skeletal sea giants. The ship also houses horrors such as bone hydras, creatures of sea-stained bone and dark magic that can tear through the sturdiest of hulls. The Depth Guard represent the martial elite of the Dreadfleet, frequently described by those who have survived their boarding actions as the Blood Knights of the Sea. They are not the mindless, waterlogged bodies that populate the bulk of the Count's forces. They are true vampires of a lower order, human warriors of singular prowess who were hand-selected to receive the Blood Kiss before being bound to the service of the Maelstrom. Archivists theorize that many of these warriors were originally members of the Drakenhof Templars, the personal retinue that followed Nyklaus von Carstein during his blasphemous translocation from Sylvania to the Galleon's graveyard. Their appearance, it's a harrowing sight upon the high seas, or when they set their foot on land, for they are encased in heavy Baroque plate armor and sealed helmets that possess a disturbing appearance. They possess the superhuman speed and durability inherent to the vampiric curse, allowing them to wade through storms of shot that would fell a mortal man. Their combat style is defined by a relentless aggression known as the Hunger, a state of predatory frenzy, where the act of spilling blood allows their undead forms to knit back together and sustain their vitality in the heat of battle.
I remember the fog first. A thick fog that smelt of salt and rotted meat. Then came the Depth Guard, rising like nightmare statues in their rusted Baroque plate armor. They didn't stumble like the common dead. They moved with a predatory speed that turned our defensive line into a slaughterhouse in heartbeats. I watched a sergeant bury his halberd in one's chest, but the creature didn't even flinch. Instead, it fell into a terrifying, blood-drunk frenzy, its wounds literally knitting back together as it hacked through a man. And those sealed helmets looking like archaic diving gear never made a sound. No war cries, just the wet thud of dual axes, and the sight of men being gutted like fish. They are said to be the most deadly of that cursed maelstrom, and once they've marked a crew for death, there is no prayer in the Empire that can save you.
Whether wielding dual axes to cleave through deck crews or massive polearms to gut sea monsters, they remain the most feared killers in the service of Count Noctilus. Unlike the shambling deckhands, these vampires maintain a degree of independence on the battlefield, standing firm even when the magical grip of their master wavers. The unhallowed form of the Necrofex Colossus is perhaps the most terrifying anathema known to arcane lore. It is a walking vortex of deathly energy that mocks the very natural order of the world. While common necromancy might raise a single body, or even a mass of shambling deckhands, the creation of a Colossus represents the greater workings of the dark arts, far beyond the abilities of mere backwoods undead dancers or subservient wizards. The physical frame of these monsters always holds true to a basic, monstrous humanoid shape. They are fashioned upon a skeleton of galley-torn timber, iron or bone, onto which the flesh and musculature of the dead have been bound and shaped. Scores, often hundreds of bodies are required to provide the raw matter for a single construct. Their limbs are stitched and sealed with human fat, leaving the monstrosity headless during the long hours of the dark rites. The true horror, however, lies in the method of animation. Into the wound-like neck of the headless giant, a living human is lashed and sewn with profane surgery. The soul of this living sacrifice must be exceptionally strong, for it acts as a singular focus for the necromantic magnitude required to control the abomination. Should the mind of this living focus perish or falter, the entire Colossus will be torn asunder by the very undead that make up its fabric in a self-destructive frenzy. In the service of Count Noctilus, these constructs are often scavenged from the floor of the great ocean itself. They are walking shipwrecks, their limbs composed of barnacle-encrusted hulls and their shoulders mounting heavy rusted cannonry or four-barreled rotary cannons. They fear neither pain nor injury, dragging themselves from the ruins like a tide of death that no mortal can hope to stand against. Let this archive serve as a final warning to the lords of the Empire and the High Elves who patrol the jagged teeth of the great ocean. The master of the Galleon's graveyard is a creature bound to the Olithane. As long as the unhallowed realm persists, his unlife is protected by the very sorceries that birthed it. The phenomenon we call the Sea Curse has not abated. Ships continue to vanish into the sulphurous fogs, and the bloated dead still rise to claim the living in every port from Sartosa to Margarita. Scholars may continue to debate the metaphysical link between the Maelstrom and the Great Moor, yet the result is undeniable. A global cycle of misery that feeds the necromantic hunger of the deep. Count Noctilus has proven that the von Carstein ambition is not confined to the soil of Sylvania. He is a shadow upon the water, a predator biding his time amidst the labyrinthine spurs of Court's Reef, until the winds of magic again howl with the scent of blood.